Deforestation. Clearance. Clearing is the removal of a forest or stand of trees where the land is thereafter converted to a non-forest use. Examples of deforestation include conversion of forestland to farms, ranches, or urban use. Tropical rainforests is where the most concentrated deforestation occurs. About 30% of Earth's land surface is covered by forests. In temperate mesonic climates, natural regeneration of forest stands often will not occur in the absence of disturbance, whether natural or anthropogenic. Furthermore, biodiversity after regeneration harvest often mimics that found after natural disturbance, including biodiversity loss after naturally occurring rainforest destruction. Deforestation occurs for multiple reasons. Trees are cut down to be used or sold as fuel or timber, while cleared land is used as pasture for livestock in plantation. The removal of trees without sufficient reforestation has resulted in damage to habitat, biodiversity loss and aridity. It has adverse impacts on biosequestration of atmospheric carbon dioxide. Deforestation has also been used in war to deprive the enemy of cover for its forces and also vital resources. Modern examples of this were the use of Agent Orange by the British military in Malaya during the Malayan emergency and the United States military in Vietnam during the Vietnam War. As of 2005, net deforestation rates have ceased to increase in countries with a per capita GDP of at least $4,600. Deforested regions typically incur significant adverse soil erosion and frequently degrade into wasteland. Disregard of ascribed value, lax forest management and deficient environmental laws are some of the factors that allow deforestation to occur on a large scale. In many countries, deforestation, both naturally occurring and human-induced, is an ongoing issue. Deforestation causes extinction, changes to climatic conditions, desertification, and displacement of populations as observed by current conditions and in the past through the fossil record. More than half of all plant and land animal species in the world live in tropical forests. Between 2000 and 2012, 2.3 million square kilometers of forests around the Earth were cut down. As a result of deforestation, only 6.2 million square kilometers remain of the original 16 million square kilometers of forest that formerly covered the Earth. Causes. According to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change Secretariat, the overwhelming direct cause of deforestation is agriculture. Subsistence farming is responsible for 48% of deforestation. Commercial agriculture is responsible for 32% of deforestation. Logging is responsible for 14% of deforestation, and fuel wood removals make up 5% of deforestation. Experts do not agree on whether industrial logging is an important contributor to global deforestation. Some argue that poor people are more likely to clear forest because they have no alternatives. Others that the poor lack the ability to pay for the materials and labor needed to clear forest. One study found that population increases due to high fertility rates were a primary driver of tropical deforestation in only 8% of cases. Other causes of contemporary deforestation may include corruption of government institutions, the inequitable distribution of wealth and power, population growth and overpopulation, and urbanization. Globalization is often viewed as another root cause of deforestation, though there are cases in which the impacts of globalization have promoted localized forest recovery. In 2000, the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization found that the role of population dynamics in a local setting may vary from decisive to negligible, and that deforestation can result from a combination of population pressure and stagnating economic, social and technological conditions. The degradation of forest ecosystems systems has also been traced to economic incentives that make forest conversion appear more profitable than forest conservation. Many important forest functions have no markets, and hence, no economic value that is readily apparent to the forest owners of the communities that rely on forests for their well-being. For the perspective of the developing world, the benefits of forest is carbon sinks, so biodiversity reserves go primarily to rich developed nations, and there is insufficient compensation for these services. Developing countries feel that some countries in the developed world, such as the United States of America, cut down the forest centuries ago and benefited greatly from this deforestation, and that it is hypocritical to deny developing countries the same opportunities, that the poor shouldn't have to bear the cost of preservation when the rich created the problem. Some commentators have noted a shift in the drivers of deforestation over the past 30 years, whereas deforestation was primarily driven by subsistence activities and government-sponsored development projects like transmigration in countries like Indonesia and colonization in Latin America, India, Java, and so on, during late 19th century and the earlier half of the 20th century. By the 1990s, the majority of deforestation was caused by industrial factors, including extractive industries, large-scale cattle ranching, and extensive agriculture. Problems with deforestation. Atmospheric deforestation is ongoing and is shaping climate and geography. Deforestation is a contributor to global warming, and is often cited as one of the major causes of the enhanced greenhouse effect. Tropical deforestation is responsible for approximately 20% of world greenhouse gas emissions. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, deforestation, mainly in tropical areas, could account for up to 1/3 of total anthropogenic carbon dioxide emissions. But recent calculations suggest that carbon dioxide emissions from deforestation and forest degradation contribute about 12% of total anthropogenic carbon dioxide emissions, with a range from 6 to 17%. Deforestation causes carbon dioxide to linger in the atmosphere. As carbon dioxide occurs, it produces a layer in the atmosphere that traps radiation from the sun. The radiation converts to heat, which causes global warming, which is better known as the greenhouse effect. Plants remove carbon in the form of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere during the process of photosynthesis, but release some carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere during normal respiration. Only when actively growing can a tree or forest remove carbon by storing it in plant tissues. Both the decay and burning of wood releases much of this stored carbon back to the atmosphere. In order for forests to take up carbon, there must be a net accumulation of wood. One way is for the wood to be harvested and turned into long-lived products, with new young trees replacing them. Deforestation may also cause carbon stores held in soil to be released. Forests can be either sinks or sources depending upon environmental circumstances. Mature forests alternate between being net sinks and net sources of carbon dioxide. In deforested areas, the land heats up faster and reaches a higher temperature, leading to localized upward motions that enhance the formation of clouds and ultimately produce more rainfall. However, according to the Geophysical Fluid Dynamics Laboratory, the models used to investigate remote responses to tropical deforestation showed a broad but mild temperature increase all through the tropical atmosphere. The model predicted an LT 0.2 degrees Celsius warming for upper air at 700 MB and 500 MB. However, the model shows no significant changes in other areas besides the tropics. Though the model showed no significant changes to the climate in areas other than the tropics, this may not be the case since the model has possible errors and the results are never absolutely definite. Reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation in developing countries has emerged as a new potential to complement ongoing climate policies. The idea consists in providing financial compensations for the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions from deforestation and forest degradation. Rainforests are widely believed by laymen to contribute a significant amount of the world's oxygen, although it is now accepted by scientists that rainforests contribute little net oxygen to the atmosphere and deforestation has only a minor effect on atmospheric oxygen levels. However, the incineration and burning of forest plants to clear land releases large amounts of CO2, which contributes to global warming. Scientists also state that tropical deforestation releases 1.5 billion tons of carbon each year into the atmosphere. Hydrological: the water cycle is also affected by deforestation. Trees extract groundwater through the roots and release it into the atmosphere. When part of a forest is removed, the trees no longer transpire this water, resulting in a much drier climate. Deforestation reduces the content of water in the soil and groundwater as well as atmospheric moisture. The dry soil leads to lower water intake for the trees to extract. Deforestation reduces soil cohesion, so that erosion, flooding and landslides ensue. Shrinking forest cover lessens the landscape's capacity to intercept, retain and transpire precipitation. Instead of trapping precipitation, which then percolates to groundwater systems, deforested areas become sources of surface water runoff, which moves much faster than subsurface flows. Forests return most of the water that falls as precipitation to the atmosphere by transpiration. In contrast, when an area is deforested, almost all precipitation is lost as runoff. That quicker transport of surface water can translate into flash flooding and more localized floods than would occur with the forest cover. Deforestation also contributes to decreased evapotranspiration, which lessens atmospheric moisture, which in some cases affects precipitation levels downwind from the deforested area, as water is not recycled to downwind forests but is lost in runoff and returns directly to the oceans. According to one study, in deforested North and Northwest China, the average annual precipitation decreased by 1/3 between the 1950s and the 1980s. Trees and plants in general affect the water cycle significantly. Their canopies intercept a proportion of precipitation, which is then evaporated back to the atmosphere. Their litter, stems and trunks slow down surface runoff. The roots create macropores, large conduits, in the soil that increase infiltration of water. They contribute to terrestrial evaporation and reduce soil moisture via transpiration. The litter and other organic residue change soil properties that affect the capacity of soil to store water. The leaves control the humidity of the atmosphere by transpiring. 99% of the water absorbed by the roots moves up to the leaves and is transpired. As a result, the presence or absence of trees can change the quantity of water on the surface, in the soil or groundwater, or in the atmosphere. This in turn changes erosion rates and the availability of water for either ecosystem functions or human services. The forest may have little impact on flooding in the case of large rainfall events, which overwhelm the storage capacity of forest soil if the soils are at a close to oversaturation. Tropical rainforests produce about 30% of our planet's fresh water. Soil undisturbed forests have a very low rate of soil loss, approximately 2 metric tons per square kilometer. Deforestation generally increases rates of soil loss by increasing the amount of runoff and reducing the protection of the soil from tree litter. This can be an advantage in excessively leached tropical rainforest soils. Forestry operations themselves also increase erosion through the development of roads and the use of mechanized equipment. China's lowest plateau was cleared of forest millennia ago. Since then it has been eroding, creating dramatic incised valleys, and providing the sediment that gives the Yellow River its yellow color and that causes the flooding of the river in the lower reaches. Removal of trees does not always increase erosion rates. In certain regions of southwest U.S., shrubs and trees have been encroaching on grassland. The trees themselves enhance the loss of grass between tree canopies. The bare intercanopy areas become highly erodible. The U.S. Forest Service in Bandelier National Monument, for example, is studying how to restore the former ecosystem and reduce erosion. By removing the trees, tree roots bind soil together, and if the soil is sufficiently shallow they act to keep the soil in place by also binding with underlying bedrock. Tree removal on steep slopes with shallow soil thus increases the risk of landslides, which can threaten people living nearby. Biodiversity. Deforestation on a human scale results in decline in biodiversity, and on a natural global scale is known to cause the extinction of many species. The removal or destruction of areas of forest cover has resulted in a degraded environment with reduced biodiversity. Forests support biodiversity, providing habitat for wildlife. Moreover, forests foster medicinal conservation, with forest biotopes being an irreplaceable source of new drugs. Deforestation can destroy genetic variations irretrievably. Since the tropical rainforests are the most diverse ecosystems on Earth and about 80% of the world's known biodiversity could be found in tropical rainforests, removal or destruction of significant areas of forest cover has resulted in a degraded environment with reduced biodiversity. A study in Rondônia, Brazil, has shown that deforestation also removes the microbial community which is involved in the recycling of nutrients, the production of clean water and the removal of pollutants. It has been estimated that we are losing 137 plant, animal and insect species every single day due to rainforest deforestation, which equates to 50,000 species a year. Others state that tropical rainforest deforestation is contributing to the ongoing Holocene mass extinction. The known extinction rates from deforestation rates are very low, approximately 1 species per year from mammals and birds, which extrapolates to approximately 23,000 species per year for all species. Predictions have been made that more than 40% of the animal and plant species in Southeast Asia could be wiped out in the 21st century. Such predictions were called into question by 1995 data that show that within regions of Southeast Asia much of the original forest has been converted to monospecific plantations, but the potentially endangered species are few and tree flora remains widespread and stable. Scientific understanding of the process of extinction is insufficient to accurately make predictions about the impact of deforestation on biodiversity. Most predictions of forestry-related biodiversity loss are based on species area models, with an underlying assumption that as the forest declines, species diversity will decline similarly. However, many such models have been proven to be wrong, and loss of habitat does not necessarily lead to large-scale loss of species. Species area models are known to overpredict the number of species species known to be threatened in areas where actual deforestation is ongoing, and greatly overpredict the number of threatened species that are widespread. A recent study of the Brazilian Amazon predicts that despite a lack of extinctions thus far, up to 90% of predicted extinctions will finally occur in the next 40 years. Economic impact. Damage to forests and other aspects of nature could halve living standards for the world's poor and reduce global GDP by about 7% by 2050. A report concluded at the Convention on Biological Diversity meeting in Bonn. Historically, utilization of forest products, including timber and fuel wood, has played a key role in human societies, comparable to the roles of water and cultivable land. Today, developed countries continue to utilize timber for building houses, and wood pulp for paper. In developing countries, almost 3 billion people rely on wood for heating and cooking. The forest products industry is a large part of the economy in both developed and developing countries. Short-term economic gains made by conversion of forest to agriculture, or overexploitation of wood products, typically leads to loss of long-term income and long-term biological productivity. West Africa, Madagascar, Southeast Asia and many other regions have experienced lower revenue because of declining timber harvests. Illegal logging causes billions of dollars of losses to national economies annually. The new procedures to get amounts of wood are causing more harm to the economy and overpower the amount of money spent by people employed in logging. According to a study, in most areas studied, the various ventures that prompted deforestation rarely generated more than $5 for every ton of carbon they released, and frequently returned far less than $1. The price on the European market for an offset tied to a 1-ton reduction in carbon is €23. Rapidly growing economies also have an effect on deforestation. Most pressure will come from the world's developing countries, which have the fastest growing populations and most rapid economic growth. In 1995, economic growth in developing countries reached nearly 6%, compared with the 2% growth rate for developed countries. Quote, "As our human population grows, new homes, communities, and expansions of cities will occur. Connecting all of the new expansions will be roads, a very important part in our daily life. Rural roads promote economic development but also facilitate deforestation. About 90% of the deforestation has occurred within 100 kilometers of roads in most parts of the Amazon. The European Union is one of the largest importer of products made from illegal deforestation." Forest transition theory. The forest area change may follow a pattern suggested by the forest transition theory, whereby at early stages in its development a country is characterized by high forest cover and low deforestation rates. Then deforestation rates accelerate, and forest cover is reduced, before the deforestation rate slows, after which forest cover stabilizes and eventually starts recovering. FD is not a law of nature, and the pattern is influenced by national context, global economic forces, and government policies. A country may reach very low levels of forest cover before it stabilizes, or it might, through good policies, be able to bridge the forest transition. FD depicts a broad trend, and an extrapolation of historical rates therefore tends to underestimate future biodeforestation for counties at the early stages in the transition, while it tends to overestimate biodeforestation for countries at the later stages. Countries with high forest cover can be expected to be at early stages of the FD. GDP per capita captures the stage in a country's economic development, which is linked to the pattern of natural resource use, including forests. The choice of forest cover and GDP per capita also fits well with the two key scenarios in the FD. A forest forest scarcity path, where forest scarcity triggers forces that lead to forest cover stabilization, and an economic development path, where new and better off farm employment opportunities associated with economic growth reduce profitability of frontier agriculture and slows deforestation.